So I'd like to share a story with you this morning about a hapless truck driver. As he drove down the highway, he noticed a road sign in the distance that read "Low Bridge ahead." Feeling especially lucky, he decided that that was not a message for him that day. But as luck would have it, it was a warning that was meant for him, and sure enough, the trucker gets stuck under the bridge. And in a very short time, cars are backed up for miles, honking their horns in impatience. And after what seems like an eternity, a police officer arrives on the scene. Well, the truck driver breathes a sigh of relief. However, the policeman gets out of his cruiser, walks around to the truck driver, puts his hands on his hips and remarks, "I see you're stuck, huh?" Dismayed, the truck driver replies sarcastically, "Oh no, your officer, not at all. Actually, I was delivering this very bridge and I just ran out of gas." So I would venture to guess that we can all empathize with this truck driver. We've all experienced those stuck places in our life. Have you ever noticed when you have just a moment to sit and to breathe without distraction, that there are a lot of things that nag at you? Unfulfilled projects and wishes, grudges that you know you shouldn't have, topics of current concern that keep coming back and calling for your attention? Do you ever have the sense of being stuck in or with all of this? I know I have. And there is usually a sense of anxiety or panic at the realization that we are feeling really stuck. A sense that life is moving on and leaving us behind. Feeling stuck implies that life is moving, changing, in constant transition, and our inner wisdom tells us that we need to keep up. This morning, we're going to explore transitions. Let's take a moment to experience one of the transitions that is taking place in each and every one of us in this very moment. So, for the second time today, I invite you to close your eyes just for a moment and focus on your breath. Just watch it. Don't do anything to interfere with it. Notice the place in your body where you feel your breath rising and falling. Perhaps it's in the area of your heart. Perhaps it's in your belly. Notice the gap between the inhalation and the exhalation. How each breath seems to end, but doesn't end. Notice that each breath is unique. Not at all like the previous breath. And ponder this. Without this constant and ongoing transition, we would not be able to survive. I invite you now to become aware of your surroundings, and when you feel ready, you may open your eyes. Thank you for participating in my little experiment. Hopefully you became aware of one of the ever-present transitions that keeps your body alive that we so often take for granted. There are actually numerous ongoing transitions in our body in every moment. We have a whole nervous system that is dedicated to managing these transitions, called the autonomic nervous system. The autonomic nervous system is a control system that acts largely unconsciously and regulates bodily functions, such as heart rate, respiratory rate, digestion, and a host of other transformations that are occurring constantly without our awareness. Life truly is a dynamic process. Within our body this very moment, there are millions of transitions underway. Oxygen is being carried through our entire body. Fuel is being processed and dispensed. Waste is being removed from every part of our body. And in the midst of all this transition, cells are dying and regenerating constantly. In fact, there are between 50 and 75 trillion cells in the body, and each type of cell has its own lifespan. When a cell dies, it's replaced by a new cell. Over time, all the cells of our body die and are replaced with new cells. So the body that you're living in from today is not the same body you lived from last year. Your body is in constant transition. And that's not the only part of us that is in constant transition. Life as we experience it is a constant dance with the universal process of transition. From the development of our body, to the development of our psyche, to the development of skills, abilities, and talents, We are forever changing. This is not new information. We've been aware of this aspect of our life for centuries. Heraclitus, a pre-Socratic Greek philosopher, is quoted as saying, "Change is the only constant in life." So why is it that most of us resist change? Why do we get stuck in life's transition? Given the certainty and constancy of change, it doesn't seem to be a very wise idea. How can we peacefully coexist with constant transition? I would like to explore these questions with you today as we focus on a particular type of transition, the type of transition that transforms us. Transformational transitions may originate from a conscious choice, like deciding to adopt a more healthy lifestyle, or from external events such as a death, injury, or an illness, or from a physical process like aging. These types of transitions are organic, they're messy, chaotic, circular, and overlapping. They are not linear processes that can be fixed, that have a specific beginning and a specific end. Let's look at a couple of examples. What happens when your computer undergoes a transition? Say it no longer retrieves and saves files. This type of transition needs to be repaired. So we either go to the Apple store and get it fixed, or we bite the bullet and we buy a new computer. However, taking the same approach to an organic transition would not be wise. Think of a baby chick struggling to hatch from an egg. If we try to fix that transition by helping the baby chick break the eggshell, we would harm the baby chick. The struggle of breaking out of the eggshell provides the baby chick with the necessary nutrients and strength to survive the first days of its life in this world. This is the kind of struggle we encounter in powerful transitions of transformation. And just as the baby chick teaches us, we can only complete the transformational transitions by cooperating with the universal process. We cannot shortcut, we cannot bypass the process. It is in completing these organic transitions that we bring heaven down to earth. I invite you to bring to mind a transition that you've experienced recently, or are experiencing now. The transition that comes to my mind is the passing of my parents. Although it's been several years since their passing, I still struggle with it today. When I become aware of powerful feelings of guilt, of anger, of shame, and of sadness, I do everything I can to escape, to suppress, and to ignore. I distract myself, I become busy, I replace those thoughts with others' thoughts. In other words, I am stuck in this very important transformational transition. And I'm amused to notice that the feelings I have in this stuck place is the sense of a very, very heavy burden pressing down on me, much like the bridge that the truck driver was transporting when he ran out of gas in my opening remarks. Very recently, however, I was able to move through a part of this transition, to get unstuck, so to speak. That process of moving through a transition is what I'd like to share with you today. The story of Jacob's ladder is a beautiful metaphor of this very powerful process. It gives us a way to explore our own very personal experience from a distance and gives us some guidance and direction for this journey. This story opens with a very stormy ending, full of drama and chaos. Jacob has just tricked his twin brother Esau out of his birthright blessing. In the ancient world, this birthright blessing that went to the firstborn son would allow that son to inherit all of the family property, possessions, and wealth in order to continue the family's lineage. When Jacob's deceit comes to light, Esau becomes enraged and threatens to kill Jacob. On cue, Mother Rebecca enters the scene. In order to protect her favorite son, Jacob, Rebecca persuades her husband Isaac to send Jacob on a journey to find a wife for himself from among her people. We read in Genesis 28, so Jacob left Beersheba and set out for Haran. This is the harbinger of a transition. All transitions begin with an ending. The story continues, and Jacob reaches a certain place where he decides to camp because darkness has come. Actually, the translation here is not quite correct. The Hebrew words used in this story indicate that this is not a natural darkness that comes from the sun setting. This is a darkness caused by God in an unnatural way. It makes me think of the darkness we all experienced in the middle of the day during the last eclipse of the sun, a very unsettling and unnatural experience. So Jacob took one of the stones and placed it near his head. Then he fell asleep in that place and had a dream. He saw a stairway erected on earth with its top reaching to heaven. The angels of God were going up and coming down it, and the Lord stood at its top. The Lord said, I am the Lord, the God of your grandfather Abraham, the God of your father Isaac. I will give you and your descendants the ground that you are lying on. I am with you. I will protect you wherever you go, and I'll bring you back to this land. I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised. Then Jacob woke up and thought, surely the Lord is in his place, and I did not realize it. He was afraid and said, what an awesome place this is. This is nothing else than the house of God. This is the gate of heaven. In other words, heaven has come down to earth in this place. In this story, we see the anatomy of transformational transition. These organic transitions have 3 phases. In each of these phases, there are specific tasks that must be completed in order to move through the transition and not become stuck in it. The story opens with an ending, as I said before. Jacob left Beersheba, leaving his father on his deathbed, estranged from his only brother. This is the first phase of all transitions. All transitions begin with an ending, a letting go, a severance. Jacob was leaving the home of his childhood, leaving his parents, leaving his familiar surroundings, to embark on a journey to discover his wife. Jacob's father Isaac had sent him away from the comfort and familiarity of home to journey on his own, totally alone, with no guidance whatsoever to find some unknown place to find a suitable wife for himself. Jacob was given a challenge with absolutely no guidance. Have you ever found yourself in a similar situation? Perhaps the loss of a job, the ending of a relationship, the death of a loved one, the onset of an illness or an injury that has required you to let go of the familiar with no outward guidance or support. In order to pass through this first phase of transition, this ending, this letting go of the familiar, there are 2 tasks that must be completed. Angels, which represent energies, ascend and descend the ladder from heaven to earth in order to help us with these tasks if we allow it, as Jacob did. The first thing we must do is we must move forward in the presence of fear. Courage arises to assist us in expanding out of the old and into the new. However, if we're not intentional in allowing this courage to arise from within us, we can slip into blame and anger. While these emotions may feel appropriate, playing the victim will cause us to become stuck in the transition. Incomplete transitions become the baggage we carry with us as we move through our life experience. They slow us down, they block us, they cause us to feel stuck. The second task that is necessary to move through this first phase of the ending is letting go of the old and to hold the grief and stay with the loss of letting go. This is what caused me to be stuck in the transition that I shared earlier with you, the transition of losing my parents. And I think this is why many of us resist transitions, because every transition begins with a loss. We experience grief at letting go of the familiar, of the cherished, of the loved. This can be painful, and it is so tempting to bypass these difficult emotions as I did, stuffing them into our unconscious and hoping they'll never arise to bother us again. How do we move through this stuck place? We call on our courage to stay with the feelings of grief, even as they overwhelm us and seem to drown us with sorrow. When we do this, when we fully experience these painful feelings, a miracle occurs. Compassion arises from our own true essence, our higher self, the Christ within us, and allows us to hold the grief and to stay with the process of letting go, allowing the process to complete. However, if we're not diligent and intentional to stay with our feelings, we may slip into self-pity, reaching out for sympathy. While this self-pity may seem like a sure escape from these overwhelming feelings of loss and grief, self-pity actually shuts us down and cuts off our emotions we need to feel in order to be released from the old experience and into the new. When we successfully complete this phase of transition, we move into the second phase, the liminal phase of the transition. Limin is a Latin word for edge. In the liminal phase, we are on the edge of the known and the unknown. This is the phase of not knowing. It's a place of darkness, of mystery, and of incubation. So returning to our story of Jacob, sometime after leaving Beersheba, Jacob reached a certain place and decided to camp because he had encountered an unexpected darkness caused by God. And he falls asleep and has this dream of angels ascending and descending the ladder that reaches from heaven to earth. Notice the order here. The angels are ascending from the earth to heaven and then descending from heaven to earth. This is curious to me. What are these angels that originate on earth and ascend up to heaven? Could they represent the energies of anger, blame, and self-pity, reaching out for sympathy that I mentioned earlier? These energies come from our ego, the structure and the patterns that we've created to protect ourselves from the wounding that we experience. Our ego strives to mimic the divine by building strategies to restore the divine connection where we were born with and were made to experience. Can these ego strategies actually be angels ascending up into heaven? Indeed, they can. When we realize that God comes to us when we face our dark side, when we accept and honor our ego defenses and fixations, these are the angels ascending up the ladder into heaven. When we allow this, then the angels from heaven descend to earth, and we have access to our higher self and all of its capacities. This is the work of the liminal phase of the transformation, allowing our energies of ego to flow up from us into heaven to our higher self, and then to accept the transformed energies and capacities that flow down to us from our higher self to assist us in completing the transition. So what are the tasks that must be completed in the second phase? The first task is simply to allow the emptiness to dissolve the old identity, the old structures, and the old patterns. This dissolving creates sufficient emptiness for spaciousness to arise within us and open us to the mystery of what cannot be imagined or named. This spaciousness brings a vast clarity of space, an openness that creates space to allow the unfolding of the new to happen. Notice that in this phase, Jacob lies down and falls asleep. This is not a phase of action. It's a phase of incubation, of allowing, of receptivity. Our task is to allow the new to arise. We cannot grasp the new. We cannot work to create the new. Our task is to create the space to allow it. If we are not intentional in allowing the spaciousness to arise, we can slip into disillusionment and get stuck in the disappointment we feel as old ideals, old dreams that are no longer valid for us disintegrate and fragment. A second angel that descends from a higher self is the angel of peace. That quiet and still presence, the experience of consciousness is stillness. The psalmist was alluding to this quality of our higher nature when he said, "Be still and know that I am God." When we allow this peace, this stillness to fill us, we become receptive to insights, ideas, and truths. We become more intuitive, more open to the knowledge in a way that we do not understand or directly perceive. As I work with the transition of losing my parents, I realize that I've spent 9 years in this liminal phase so far. It has taken me that long to discover the practices that allow the emptiness to dissolve the old beliefs, creating room for the spaciousness to arise within me and heal me. I had the good fortune to attend a life transitions workshop just a few weeks ago. As part of that experience, I was guided through an inquiry exercise. As I allowed the grief, the guilt, and the sadness to arise, as I was helped to stay with those feelings and to explore how they felt, how they looked, and where they lived within me, I felt an overwhelming sense of peace like I'd never felt before. It was like a thick, velvety dark blanket that enveloped me, and I knew in that instant that I had gotten unstuck from that phase of my transformation. You see, there is a timelessness to this phase, this liminal phase. just as there is when we sleep, or when Jacob dreams. And just as with sleep and dreams, there is a time we awake and we know that we've completed this phase of the transition. Returning once more to our story, Jacob awakes and has a powerful realization. Surely the Lord is in this place and I did not realize it. What an awesome place this is. This is nothing but the house of God. This is the gate of heaven. This represents the third and final phase of transition, the new beginning, the birth, the transformation. The first task of this phase is to take in and deeply receive the new with appreciation of all that has happened in the process of transition before it. Appreciation for the difficulties of loss, of anger, of guilt, allows us to see that the earlier phases and tasks were necessary to bring us to this new creation, this transformation. Joy arises from within us with a sense of celebration, like the coming of a dawn after a long and difficult night. Joy is the freedom to be who we are, to change, to grow, to follow wherever our being takes us. This is how I knew I had completed the liminal phase of the transition of losing my parents. After experiencing that deep, dark, enveloping peace that I described, appreciating all that my process had healed within me, I felt a lightness I had not experienced in many years. It was as though a huge weight had been removed from my shoulders. The seriousness and the sadness that had formed the backdrop of my daily existence had vanished. I could breathe again. I could move again. I could fly again. I was free. I was swimming in joy. God had been in this place all along, and I did not know it. The trap that often appears in this phase is ego judgment and evaluation, and that followed shortly after my feeling of release. Discounting what we don't understand and can't explain, belittling our transformation, trying to dismiss it as though it wasn't the event that it was. We wonder, what will others think of us? Are we a fraud? Maybe this powerful transformation isn't real. Ego judgment and evaluation contracts us and keeps us small. But if we fully embody the new and express it boldly in the presence of the inertia that pulls us back to the old familiar way of being, a steadfastness arises from within to help us. We can then be resilient and remember who we truly are. We have the confidence to stay true to our new self and to trust that we have inherent in us all of the resources that we need to bring heaven down to earth. The life transitions that visit us are but doorways to transformation. This process is beautifully described by Kristen Rogers in her poem entitled Seasons of the Heart. Every season of the heart has its own perfect time and an important purpose. Even those that shake you, like the harsh winds of fall that shake the trees, for they help you drop unnecessary things. Even those that challenge your footing, like the rains of spring loosen the ground beneath a flower's roots, because they give you a chance to dig even deeper. And even those that feel like they chill you almost to death, like the winter cold does to the once vibrant flower, for they cleanse and ready you for the beauty of your coming spring. Embrace transitions. They are opportunities for growth. They are opportunities to transform. They are opportunities to bring heaven down to earth. Let's close in a word of prayer. We breathe in now, opening our hearts and minds to the presence of God. We open to the courage of God, the ever-present strength and capacity to discern our purpose and fulfill it. We open to the peace of God, the peace that assures us deep within our souls that we are being divinely guided to our highest good. We open to the joy of God, the infinite freedom to open to life, to embrace our experience and to allow ourselves to just be without fear. In this sacred moment, we allow the angels of courage, peace, and joy to minister to us, to bring heaven down to earth in each one of us. United in an awareness of all that is God, we affirm that God is our source, our supply, and our wisdom. In the faith that God is always with us, guiding us on our life's path, we give thanks, and so it is.